I'm extremely pleased to welcome this morning Professor Fumihiko Maki. Actually, a lot has been said about globalization and global architecture, but there are few who understood it from its beginning in the post-war period as a condition of the contemporary world and as an opportunity for architecture practice. Professor Maki would reflect on it, and he would take it as a challenge in his own international practice. Soon after finishing his studies at Tokyo University, Professor Maki moved for more than 10 years to the US, where he first studied at Cranbrook Academy of Art and then at Harvard Graduate School of Design. After working for Skidmore, Owings & Merrill in New York and José Luis Sert in Cambridge, he would begin to teach at the Washington University in St. Louis, and from 62 to 65 at the GSD. After returning to Tokyo in 1965, he started with his own architectural practice, which includes a wide range of buildings from museums to university campuses, fort facilities, as well as houses. In his long career, Professor Maki would be awarded with several prizes, prestigious prizes, as the Pritzker Prize, 1993, the Premium Imperiale, 1999, and recently the AIA Gold Medal for his merit in architecture and architectural theory. Today, in this interview, I would like to address the formative years of Professor Maki, beginning in Japan, then going on to America, traveling with him through the world, and ending, hopefully, with some of his major buildings. Professor Maki, in an autobiographical account, you underline the importance of the research lab of Kenzo Tange at Tokyo University in the late 40s and early 50s. How do we have to imagine architectural studies in the aftermath of World War II?
Well, I entered to the University of Tokyo, 1949, when Mr. Tange was not only teaching, but he had a studio in the university. So I was able to see what's going on in his atelier. And it was a time he was still designing this Hiroshima Peace Center. So my initiation with Tange was this one. And I studied 3 years until 1952. But in last year of my presence in the University of Tokyo, I had my thesis under him. But also, before going to the United States, in September 1952, I had a chance to work briefly in his atelier in the University of Tokyo. That's my connection
with the Tange.
Yes.
Can I quickly
Sure.
move? And was the destruction and reconstruction a theme during your studies? Because in some war, it's just the aftermath of World War II, so a lot had to be rebuilt and redesigned, and a lot of public buildings also had to be...
Sure, in Japan, yes.
And was this a theme? Did you do urban schemes or...
No.
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 So your training was handcraft?
You see, he was entering the competition of new Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Tokyo, and I participated in this competition. That's all. Then I left for United States. But after I came back from the States, he asked me to lecture for his department.
Yes.
And later I taught at the university. But it was after he retired.
Oh, from university.
Yes.
And so the university and the atelier were really similar in some way?
You see, he retained his atelier in university until his practice became too big. So he moved his atelier from the university to outside, someplace in Tokyo. But that must have been 1960, when he was designing the famous swimming pool for the Olympic, which took place in 1964.
In Tokyo?
Tokyo, yes.
And you seem from the beginning also very attracted by modern architecture. In your biography you describe how as a child you already discovered modernism in some way.
Yeah, and you're going to show.
Yes, I'm going to show.
Well, this is the house of architect Kameki Tsuchiura. And the house must have been designed, yes, 1935. I was born in 28, so I was about 7 years old. And somebody who was acquaintance of my parents, architects, were working for Tsuchiura. And then I had a chance to go to see this house with my parents and their friend. And I was struck by this kind of a special organization. I haven't seen them before. But also, my parents often took me to Yokohama seaport whenever big sort of ships from abroad came in. And I just found some similarity of a special organization, the way they made a very thin, the railing and so on. So that was my probably first introduction to modern architecture. And Mr. Tsuchiura worked for Frank Lloyd Wright in the 1920s, when Wright was designing the Imperial Hotel. And after he left, he invited him and his wife to Taliesin, his atelier in Arizona or someplace. Yes. And on the way, he visited a number of modern buildings and in California. And after he spent years in his atelier, also he went to probably the first time to Europe, where he was able to see some of modern buildings of that time. It must have been early 1930s. And a funny story is, after he came back, he sent the picture of this house to Wright, and the Wright was not pleased.
And the discussion about modern architecture, was this an issue in the lab of Tange at the university? Did you discuss about? No. And how comes that you obviously discovered a building by Gropius in l'Architektur d'aujourd'hui?
Well, very few publications from abroad are available in my time, let's say late 40s and early 50s. And we took some of the publications more seriously than today, because we have so many publications coming in almost every day. I just don't have even time to see them. But that time, Architektur d'aujourd'hui, one of sort of foreign publication, which we students very carefully studied. And there was a special issue on Harvard education conducted by Gropius.
Yes.
And I was very much attracted by this special issue on Harvard. And so I thought perhaps it's good to study further there. Since today, we are able to practice everywhere. But Europe was also very much suffered from the condition created by Second World War. So the United States could be only place you could see the certain things which modernists been dreaming up over years during even the Second World War are being realized. And Mies was case. He moved into States. 40s?
Late 30s.
Late 30s,
yes.
after,
Yes. When he had no work in Germany, he left. That's the reason. Yeah? That's the reason, yes.
He had some projects, of course, Barcelona Pavilion.
Yeah, but in the late 30s.
Late 30s, yes.
It was difficult, yes.
Sure.
Yes.
So that is the case.
And how did you choose Cranbrook and not, for instance?
This is just a coincidence. I applied to Harvard in the 50s. Then they said your application was too late, so why don't you wait one more year? So I thought went to Cranbrook as a good initiation of my years in Harvard. And I was very lucky. Had I been to Harvard, accepted in 1952, then there was nobody in Harvard because Gropius had already retired. And it was before Jose Luis Sert came in. And it was very lucky because it was absent time. And had I been to Harvard 1 year earlier, not meeting with Sert, and
your career,
also Dolph Schnebly, my life might have been changed.
And Cranbrook, you went there, you knew, of course, of Saarinen or of?
Oh yes, because I studied in campus designed by Elder Saarinen.
Yes.
And already he passed away at the time I was there, but his son, Eero Saarinen, was practicing in Bloomfield Hills near the campus. But he never visited the
campus of his father.
Cranbrook. There was no connection with it. But whenever we drove through the front of his office in night, the light was going up.
Still.
Like any architectural studios. I must correct. And old Saarinen was still alive because when there was a competition on the Jefferson Memorial, both the old and the Saarinen and the son entered. And
it was just before him passing.
Just before he passed away. Yeah.
But it was quite unusual that somebody from Japan would go to the United States, wasn't it? You were
well, already a few Japanese young architects been to the United States, One of them was Mr. Ashihara. He was a senior architect of Japan in the post-war period.
When looking at your biography, I had the impression the first urban design conference was a kind of important issue
yes.
during your stay at Harvard.
Yes.
Is that true?
No, it was when was it?
1956.
1956 was a year I began to teach at Washington U. But till then, I was working for Jose Research and my postgraduate study at Harvard. So I had a chance to be in this urban design conference. And I think it was initiated by Surt. He had been the chairman of SIAM. And the SIAM began to be dissolved, as you know, after a strong protest from a young component we call Team 10. So he thought it might be a good idea to revitalize some of, not entirely, but some of SIAM philosophy in the United States. So I think this was a motivation of Surt to initiate this kind of urban design conference in Harvard. And
was Surt in some way the man who introduced you to urban design?
Well, as a student, you know, I came in 1953 to Harvard, and Dolph Schneebly was also a student at that time, and he was also the chairman of architectural department as well. Besides, he was appointed to be a dean, and he conducted master's class studio. So we learned a lot through this studio work about the urban design from him.
Because you told Tange was more interested in the architectural object?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
But for instance, when you look at this Hiroshima Peace Memorial Centers, then it was probably one of the first time there was a concern for larger sort of space in which each architectural object must be placed properly. And because until then, the many Japanese architects have been interested in just the architectural objects themselves. But in the case of Hiroshima, because there's no drawing, but it was to set up certain axes for a broader area in the center of the Hiroshima. Then he placed this his peace center in relation to a particular sort of idea he had for Hiroshima itself. So he was a pioneer in also
yes.
this regard.
When I looked through the different proposition which were presented at the Harvard Design Conference, I had the impression there was a huge range of position. On the one way, Sert continuing and reforming the SIAM doctrine in some way. And on the other side, positions like Victor Grün proposing a kind of huge shopping mall kind revitalization.
No,
of the
I think
center
the
of
most
Portland.
important things in this Gruen picture was that he tried to produce the place where there will be no automobile. Once you, because it's and you may not be able to see clearly, but I think all car must be stopped at the periphery of
Yes.
This development. And then once you come inside, it's free from
Yes, here.
vehicle movement. But that is, and yeah.
It's the parking garage
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, that's right. You have to
Forward.
park your car before you enter to the center. It was, well, you see, this was in, where is it, Texas?
In Fort Worth, Texas.
Fort Worth, Texas.
Yes, yes.
And vehicle movement, dominant force for shaping up the cities in the United States. But Victor Gruen's idea was to just stop the car at the periphery and then to make interior spaces free from auto movement. But this was exactly a kind of position I took when I did investigation of the
Movement
study
in
for
Boston. Which we will see
later.
in 3 or 4 slides.
Yeah.
So we have to travel now because we are going to the west. Perhaps the next important step, then you get the position in St. Louis, and 58 you get this grant for a 2 years travel. Is that right?
Yes, Grant Foundation Fellowship was a very generous fellowship in the U.S. And the foundation headquarters is in Chicago. And the only obligation we recipients had is to spend 1 week in Chicago. And where I met the Doshi from India the first time, but also artists, sculptors, and Chirida from Spain was also one of them. So I decided to just stop teaching, and then I had a 2 years privilege to go to places where I haven't been, because traveling is very expensive that time. I could not afford without this fund. So I took opportunity to travel twice. In the blue sort of chart, you could see I left Tokyo and went to Hong Kong, Singapore, Bombay, to Chandigarh, to Middle East. That time, the passport is only for 1 year, but if you go to Middle East, Islam countries, you could not get into Israel. If you had been Israel, you could not allow to go to see. But so I divided my time into 2 because I was interested in looking at the kibbutz in Israel. But that had to be wait until my second trip to this journey.
So the blue one is the first trip?
First trip, and I went to Tehran, Isfahan, and Damascus, to Beirut, to Cairo, to Istanbul, all Islamic countries. And then went to Europe.
To the north.
North, to the south.
And what did you visit over there?
You mean?
Did you see the social housing, or did you visit Leverance and Asplund and?
Not so much, but I went to Bergen, to the north, and I was with my relatives. We drove down to south.
And did you prepare this trip?
Sure.
And what were what was the hypothesis, or what was the main goal of this trip?
Main goal is to see some of Corbu's buildings. starting in Chandigarh to Marseille, in 2 trips, and so on. But also, I wanted to see the old buildings as well as some of nice towns, villages in the Greek island. You should want to show.
Yes, this one. Actually, it's
in Idra was the one on the left.
Yes.
Yes, and the one on the right must have been the Isfahan.
Yes, Isfahan in Iran.
And,
yes.
Because I was very much struck by the way they incrementally developed the city, but with certain principles behind it. Yes. And the principles could be different depending on the region and the cultures and time and so on.
So on the one side it was Corbu, and on the other side it was urban settlements in different cultures.
Sure, yeah, but also many old churches.
Yes.
And 2 guidebooks at the time I was traveling. One is Pevsner's book on, yes, and also Siegfried Gideon's book on space-time and architecture. And I tried to go into see those buildings and the places illustrated in those 2 books.
And Pevsner, it was book on modern architecture, pioneers.
Yes.
It was the pioneers book.
Pioneer, yeah.
And did you sketch or did you
I
draw
did
plans?
some, but it took more photographs. I was carrying a Japanese camera, Nikon, but also the heavy German camera as well.
What, Leica? Or?
Leica. No?
Rolleiflex?
Probably. One lens. Yes, yes. On the second trip, my wife was with me, so she was assistant.
For your photos.
My
and the first trip you did alone?
No, with my relative. No, first part
Yes.
I did alone, but later my relative, my uncle, joined.
He was an architect too?
No, he was running a construction company.
Okay.
Okay.
That's an interesting
I was
combination.
Interpreter as well.
Actually, what strikes me with this journey, that in some ways there is also it reflects also a change in architecture and the understanding of architecture. I would say till the 50s there was a kind of international style, broadening or putting modern architecture all over the world, or trying to find a general style. And what you are doing, you are much more interested on a kind of patterns or
I shouldn't say I'm more interested. I was interested both the development of modern architecture at that time, but also those sort of urban patterns created there in cities and villages and so on.
Another person who begins also to interest himself for such things is Paul Rudolph. He would also write a lot on primitive culture.
Really?
You did it. Okay, you did, because you met him.
But
you knew him.
I happen to know him. When I was working for CERT in Cambridge, I had an apartment, and I just hated to cook. So always went to some restaurant in Cambridge, even for breakfast. And also Paul Rudolph happened to be on the same sort of restaurant, since he was supervising his project in Wellesley College. And he really moved to Cambridge because it was one of the first major public works for him. And we get very acquainted. He came to review Harvard when I was a student, and so began to know. And one day, he said, "Are you interested in teaching?" I said, "Why not?" It was Washington.
That's how it worked.
Because you see, the life you people are very young, but in the next 50 years, you will have the encounters, unexpected one. And it is very important. You cannot create encounters, but you have to rise on occasion, let's say, because some of the things are very important, navigating your life later, which you don't know until, such encounters would come to you. But I mentioned that I went to Harvard 1 year later. Then I had an encounter with the Jose Resort, but also with the Dolph Schnebly. Yeah. Through him, I came here quite several times.
And you did a small exhibition, actually.
Yes, I did.
Also
but anyway,
in the 70s.
It's not so important. It's a chain of encounters which might have charted your course of career.
And the indirect encounter is also that Gideon, I read, wrote a letter of recommendation for you.
Why do you know that?
Yeah,
but you see,
I did my homework.
Too much. Because I'm forced to explain about it. The reason, I must say, Jacqueline Tillett, British woman, was a translator of the famous Space-Time and Architecture from German to English. And she was also teaching at Harvard when I joined Urban Design Program, 1962. Then I had a chance also to see the Gideon in person, because I took his course and in the previous years, but only as a sort of a student, just listening what he was saying. But so somehow through Jackie Cherry, I became to know him too, and so he wrote a letter of recommendation when
for the Graham Foundation.
Yes.
And did he already teach on? Because he would change in the post-war period. Before the war, he was writing his book on modern architecture, and in the post-war period, he would begin to search for the origins of architecture.
In some of core members of original Siam was Jose Resort, Siegfried Gideon, and Le Corbusier. So naturally, when the Resort became the head of Harvard, he invited Gideon to associate with that school. And he brought his young assistant, Edward Sekra.
Edward Sekra, yes.
Yes. And then after Gideon left, Sekra took over this course, history course in Harvard. And he's a professor emeritus, but still he has office in Cambridge. And his 90th year's anniversary was celebrated last year at Harvard.
And you went there?
No. I sent a letter.
These years of travel, to come back to the travel years, were also important because you, 1960, you stop in somewhere in Tokyo and you participate to the World Design Conference, and you publish also this essay to our group form in the Metabolist publication.
Yes, exactly.
Is the group form in some way a first reflection on your travels?
Yes, particularly this the town of Idra. I had a chance to visit Michaelides, Dinos Michaelides was later dean at Washington U, but he was one of the colleagues when I was teaching together. He was a Greek, and he wrote a letter, he book on Hydra too, but he recommended me to go there in my second trip to the West. And but it was also time. Many people began to be interested in the formation of villages and small towns. And Hydra was one of them. So I might be directly influenced by visiting this place, but also there is a kind of a movement to do study on those settlements worldwide, including Japan. So it was not just my interest, but the interest shared by many scholars, researchers, historians, and architects as well.
So the question was there how to build a community?
Yes, what will be the principles of a community? Because it was a time also we began to be interested in mega structures, you know, like this Victor Gruen's, the Fort Worth, or Tange's, this proposal for the city on the ocean, and so on. But also, I've been interested in how the settlements can grow while recognizing the genetic element, which means houses, to make the whole more habitable. So,
so that's how you then developed from this hypothesis, this scheme for Shinjuku.
Yeah, it was why Shinjuku, because it was a time the Shinjuku was not developed as we see today. Interior side of this circumferential train system being developed, but outside was a huge reservoir. And already Tokyo is growing, and they said, why not develop also the area of a huge reservoir? Then Mr. Otaka and myself thought it is a good place to use, hypothetically, for our idea on group form.
And can you explain a little bit how we, because when we look at...
You see, Mr. is a combination of idea on the group form initiated by me, and also a large man-made platform, which was Mr. Otaka's lifelong pursuit. Okay. And so, so you just have a big sort of a platform on which we propose a number of facilities. Let's say, yes, starting with
the towers.
Yes.
Office buildings.
And also
it's a green
center. Yes. We have cultural and entertainment complexes on site, and so that this is a section I see, and you have.
I have one of the core of the of the office buildings,
yes.
Which is quite sculptural.
Yes, that's right. That's it. Why not?
Why not? Yes, but you did the Metabolist group formed also for the design conference. This was the main reason that some young scholars would...
Yes. And Kurokawa and Kikutake made their own proposal as well.
Yes, and on the one side you are you have the hypothesis of the group form, and in some way it's in opposition also to the really techno-utopian approaches of the other ones.
But we felt that the important thing is not express one consistent architectural philosophy. Rather, we wanted to express our concern and interest in the future of the city. So,
so you could have different positions.
Yes, but it was also true in Team 10. They are all from different countries: Holland, Greece, England, Italy, and so on. Also, their architectural philosophy are different. But I had a long association with some of the members, Aldo Van Eyck, and Giancarlo Di Carlo, and so on. But what I found very interesting was that they committed to be a lifelong friend, regardless their philosophy. Of course, they are united together when they made a protest against the Siam doctrine. But after that, well, after they succeeded in dissolving Siam, they went their own ways. But were a very close friend until they passed away. It was quite remarkable. So you can't say when, let's say, Team 10 was created, their philosophy was one and consistent throughout their life. Its momentum, it created this association. And Archigram was different. In my view, Archigram was like English gentlemen sitting in the club, smoking cigar, and also cognac, and also express and this wit.
And you would also say this of the Siam, of the old Siam?
I don't know Siam, because it was a generation behind. I don't know.
And when we have these pictures of the World Design Conference, it looks like a UN conference here.
This is also an encounter. I was going to my journey to the West, and I was preparing things. Then a friend of mine said, well, there will be young people to make a presentation on this World Design Conference, which took place in 1960. And so I participated in that.
And did you present something?
No, I was a moderator of conference. But I didn't. But we had this book.
Yes.
And 300 copies. We carried. We gave or sold. You know, like a merchant.
Yes.
Selling bananas.
And you would. I heard you would translate Lou Kahn's conference. Is that true?
Well, I was also interpreter for our small meeting in Kik Take's famous house on the Stilt. In one evening, we invited Louis Kahn, two Metabolist members. And it was a very memorable evening. And Louis Kahn always talked, things in a very enigmatic manner, which is very difficult to be translated to Japanese. But I did.
Yes,
that was my function.
To translate what is not translatable.
Yes, but you see, Kikutake, particularly like a very abstract sort of notion on the way how architecture should be made. So he was very impressed by Kahn's talk. And also he said in Japanese that he was also, he became to know Kahn's idea is somewhat very similar to Kikutake's philosophy.
That's interesting.
Yeah. He thanked me to translate this difficult language.
Yeah, I admire still 50 years after, I admire that you did this. And then, so you met also the young.
Yes, because you see, this World Design Conference, Peter Smithson was invited, and he suggested, why don't you come to Team 10 conference in Bagnols-sur-Cèze, which took place in 1960 on my second trip. Yes.
Yes, on the second trip.
Yeah, second trip. And then I became to know most of the members, as I mentioned to you.
Van Eyck.
Van Eyck and Bakema and Giancarlo Di Carlo and Peter and
Allison.
Yes, Smithson, Allison Smithson.
Yes. John Folker.
Oh, John Folker is here.
Yes, Englishman. Yes.
Englishman. And so.
And did you present something?
I presented my University of Nagoya's Toyota Memorial Drive. But my impression was that on this particular sort of conference, they are very much interested in housing.
Yes.
Because in the Bagnols-sur-Cèze, the Canderis
was building
a huge scheme. And they always talk about the great numbers. Great numbers meaning great number people. And how they can make sort of a living environment for those people. And so, but Aldo Van Eyck also presented his famous
orphanage.
This complex where
in Amsterdam.
Yes, yes.
The orphanage.
Orphanage, yes.
Yes,
I
yes.
just forgot.
No.
It's yes. It was a very impressive project. So each person, or each member, they made a presentation and criticized each other. But still, this big issue on the great number or hovering over. Yeah, I think this was. But also, we started conference in late morning. Then we had a big lunch, had a little bit of a siesta. We resumed talk around 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Then we had a big dinner, 2 big meals every day for 4 or 5 days. It was quite different from a very organized conferences you have today.
So it was much more about encountering people, speaking with
right.
people.
Yes, very informal. And some of my people brought wives. And there is a picture while we had this informal conference, the 2 or 3 wives sitting at the corner and knitting. Something like this. So it's like a large family affair.
Did you understand why Allison and Peter Smithson and also Giancarlo De Carlo didn't like Rogers?
Because
I try to understand.
You are talking about the Rogers, the
59 in Othello.
Othello, yes, they criticized. I thought Rogers, this particular building in Milano, must have been a precursor of a postmodern. And they immediately sensed the danger which could produce
such a building.
But to modernism. I think this, because I didn't attend to an Othello meeting, but they felt the dangers. But the Rogers also happened to be my teachers in Harvard, way back 1953.
Okay. When you were there. And then you returned.
You are talking about the BBPR.
Yes, BBPR and the Torre Bellesca.
Sure,
yes. And then you return to St. Louis and you publish this booklet, Investigation in Collective Forms.
Sure.
And there actually you distinguish between 3 different types of group or of collective form. And these types are actually the compositional form, the megastructure, and the group form.
Yes.
And I have the impression you have a preference for the group form. No, that's not true.
No,
it's longer and it's better.
Because you see, often to identify your position in architecture, you have to be cited to one particular ideas in the philosophy. This is the best way to establish your own identity. But it is not always necessary. So, because I was also interested in how to make collective form from a more objective sort of position. And I identified 3 basic ways to do that. Had I been a promoter of group form, this investigation in the collective form would not be used so widely, so long in many academic institutions. And I think this is my contribution, not just as a manifesto or something, because I acknowledge both the merits and demerits, and etc., and to contribute to knowledge of architecture. That seems to be just as important as making your own work.
And you collaborate with different persons there. One is Mr. Otaka, whom we spoke about, and the other is Jerry Goldberg. Was this just a colleague from St. Louis?
Well, you see, when I was teaching at Washington and making this one, I found a very bright student, Jerry Goldberg. He was in the master's class. He went to Harvard College, so he was able to write better than any other
person you knew,
or even a faculty member. So I collaborated with him, and he's more or less assisting my ideas, but also writing good English.
And then you come back 1962 to Harvard yourself.
Yes.
And there you publish another little booklet called Movement System in the City.
Yes.
Which begins first theoretically and then expands and tries to apply it to Boston.
You remember the famous word by Christopher Alexander, the city is not tree, it is a lattice. And somewhat this particular sort of constructural model expresses the lattice type network of anything, movement, social system, physical system, etc. Because the problem of the hierarchical system is when the system breaks down, the rest of the subsystem hang on, those major systems could not work. But in this kind of a lattice system, even if one node collapse, the whole system would survive. So that is the basic ideas.
So basically, actually, the picture on the on our left and the picture on the right are similar. The one is abstract, and the other is
it's more concrete.
Is
yes.
is the examples of, illustrating it?
Illustrating. You see, those two pictures may not be enough to explain the whole ideas, but we propose new movement systems for center of Boston, and then we said, just like Victor Gruen's sort of ideas on the Fort Worth, there should be transportation nodes to bring your car, and then from there you take the buses or you walk and so on to make the city very much free from the automobiles. But also we propose city corridor and the city room as the important social sort of functions in the city.
And then you propose also this kind of nodes where
yes,
different systems come together?
Well, or the people would come and then share the information there. Okay?
Yes.
And so in a way, 1970, famous Tanges, the world, the Expo pavilion built. It was
in Osaka.
In Osaka. But so we thought that this kind of place in the city might give them kind of a feeling of mutual association and so on. But again, 1960, still we thought things physically manifested. It's very important. But we are moving into an age of Facebook and where invisible networks started to make interesting connections. So here, this is the something. I think still it is quite useful, but again we are moving into a different age or association.
But already here, communication plays an important role, because
important.
in this center, if I read well, you have also information
exactly
about dangers or about big political change. You have television and things like this also.
We world now have two faces. You use laptops and can exactly get kind of information there. But also, when we look at the protests on the big squares in Cairo, Tripoli, and other places, you are going to see the physical expression in which the place, like those plaza, has a very important role. So we have now both. The question is how we can effectively not unite, but connect.
Both.
These
Yes.
both.
And this was a try there.
Yes.
Yes.
In one way of the bringing people to a place, share the information, interest, and maybe, as I said, encounters. That was the idea behind it.
And this study, I read Jacqueline Turwitt and Sert and Jerry Soltan also
Well, you see,
were important. They were critics in the acknowledgements at the end. You quote them or you mention them.
Yeah.
Yes. So I just thought perhaps
I
they
have. Yaji Soltan was also one of I think Team 10 members from
Yes.
Poland.
Yes.
And Jackie Turwitt, I said, British, and both of them are teaching as a core members in the urban design program at Harvard. But when I made this presentation in a review at Harvard, Kevin Lynch also came in from MIT, and he became very interested in this whole idea on the city as well.
Yeah, because in your text you speak also about the importance of the visibility.
Yes.
That you have to see.
Yeah.
And to orient yourself in the city.
Yes, but that coincides with the image of the city advocated by Kevin Lynch.
And there was another interesting person at MIT at this time, Appleyard.
Appleyard. Yes. Appleyard was a landscape architect teaching at, I think, Berkeley. UC Berkeley, California. But also I was a visiting member to UC Berkeley in 69 and 70. So I became friend of
with Appleyard.
Yeah.
Let's go on because we are in. I just brought one of your articles on Japanese city space and the concept of oku. I had the impression the first two writings were more about patterns and systems, and here it becomes quite specific. You try to show the differences much more than the similarities or the systems. Am I right?
Oh, you mean how the Japanese space concept differs from the one
yes, in Europe.
Europe. That was yes. And if you are interested in this one, I recommend you to read my collection of essays in English, Nurturing Dreams. They published from MIT Press 3 years ago, and I just found out you have.
Yes, we have a copy here.
And
yes.
So, because the time is very short, and it takes 1 hour to explain the basic concept, but you see, in European idea on center, it must be visible, first of all, and must be to occupy the most important sort of center of a place. And sample advance, for instance, it shows very clearly this picture. It's a sort of mountainous city with the church at the center. But in Japan, quite often, important temples and shrines are hidden, invisible from peripheral areas, because we recognize the center is not necessary to be visible, but access to that is just as important. And often, in order to find out in hidden centers, the path reaching to them becomes more important. In the Baroque sort of formation, you see the important object, and you walk just always looking at destination. And often also in Japan, the path you have to take will be meandering, not necessarily to be highly recognizable, and so on. But this concept on least accessible is the way you get the skill. In order to get skill, you have to go through unknown, invisible path to attain it. either in judo or making sushi or whatever. Even if you want to reach to the most important part of thing, you have to go through this kind of experience. So the concept of oku physically manifested, but also to be related to more philosophical sort of processes of getting your goal. So here oku is an adjective for a number of things: physical, ideal, and so on. That's it. But please read if you're interested.
Yes. Here's actually there is one issue in your collected writings, and in the Japan Architect, also in English, a version from 1979, where there are these wonderful illustrations also.
Huh.
I think they are missing in your MIT publication.
Probably so.
Some of them, and I think it's quite useful to have them for understanding. Now, the question which arises a little bit, perhaps we continue, is how to connect in some way. Okay, should I come back?
Yes.
Sorry. One more?
Because you see, reviewer and centripetal, two different kind of concepts to express the center. Often in the Japanese case, the center is hidden but wrapped by a layer of things.
Like an onion in some way.
Yes, like onions. In our address system, expresses this too. And but anyway, go to the next.
Should I go on?
Sure.
Good. Actually, I was interested in how to combine or how to bring together, in some ways, this really deep Japanese tradition with certain spatial concepts which are linked to a certain way of thinking and of living, and the modernity and modern design.
Yes.
And that's why I perhaps quite easily I just brought one or two of your project, perhaps to try to understand.
Yes.
Is there a way, in some way, to link modernity with this tradition, or this European modernity or American modernity, which you had been learning for years?
In this Risho University complex, you have arbitrarily, intentionally, I created two axes. One this way, the other that, and here we have centers, but then we have another axis, and then we join the two axes by this object, and you see this in here. So I just refuse to have octagonal composition. Instead, I did. This seems to be probably Japanese. Huh?
Yeah, I was struggling a little bit because on the one way you do all this world travel where you collect the different informations, and then in the 70s you begin to be interested in this kind of particularities.
Because as an architect, you have to have your own ideas. It's not the assemblage of knowledge and interpretation of learning, but again, you have your own inner thought, and that's it.
So let's go to another, perhaps another concept or another aspect of your work. Is this dealing with volume and line as two main categories?
Yeah. We thought, or I thought, this is the small museum in southern Japan, and you come here and go into the exhibition places. But also at the end, you see the particular garden you have created. And then we thought this expresses the end of this cross, not in the Christianities, but just indication of this geometry to express two layers. It's a little bit boring when you end your space here, but then adding the terrace, but not just a protrusion, but with this symbolic cross element, you might be able to create the depth in those spaces. That's it.
So it's bringing a supplementary layer. We have some illustration. This
and
of
you
them.
see, this picture was taken 30 years or so after the building was completed. The reason why I sent to you is, fortunately, in looking at this, so environment has grown, developed a kind of a maturity, and with trees and a little bit sculpture, object, and so on. Quite often, modern architecture is accused to become less interesting when time goes by. And it is very important to have a kind of maturity, even if it is just assemblage of materials. Often we use the synthetic materials, which is not as good as brick or stone, which could more perpetuate longer, but also can start to have their own life. It is a very serious issue for any modern architecture, unless you use those sort of materials. But environmentally, it is very important also. But I must say, it requires care, just like your teeth. You know, you have to go to the dentist, or you have to have somebody. So, but in order to have a good maintenance, it must be loved by owners of building. So most important things for the life of architecture is somewhere you must communicate with your building, to the owners. Because when the architect finishes work, that's the end of his activity, responsibility. The rest must go into the hands of those people who own or run it. And I often see the many modern architecture which are desolate and became very dirty because people didn't like it, or maybe just didn't care. And I think it is a very important mission of architect to be loved by the owner, because you are using his money, and it is a responsibility. That's it. So I don't want to give too much lecture on that because it is not your intention. But I think I was very pleased to have this picture. And by the way, this building received a 25 years award.
25 years award.
Yeah, from a JIA.
Oh, that's.
Yeah.
I want to conclude with one building, and especially with these drawing techniques you use there, because it's a kind of collage, and especially in this collage, in some way, I have the impression we have the world history in some way.
No, Japanese. That's Japanese. Left side is more Western. It's a collage of some of symbolic element of modernism. You see corn and this Cartesian thing.
Grid.
And then you have a free form and so on. So it is collage. You see, this building, spiral, is hybrid of functions. You have a restaurant, you have a cafe, exhibition space, and all other things. And you can't express each of them so clearly. But we thought we could use collage. So in a sense, this is a mask. In any architecture, some critics said, you have a mask and then maze inside. So it was precisely the case. Yeah.
And because you have two different way of collaging. The one is this modern one with the different elements and the grids, and then you have also this one.
Why not?
Why not?
Because
but can you imagine that we can question?
I'm very comfortable with those two images which oppose each other. But I said, why not? You know, when you look at, let's say, a piece of architecture, not necessarily a spiral, if that object evokes different images by people, I think it is more successful because it's free for you to interpret the meaning of facade as you like, not necessary to be one all the time. So this was the case. In the spiral could evoke image of collage or assemblage of some Japanese element. And that's it.
Yeah, it's actually
the essence of architecture, isn't it? Because
yeah, but in some way, as an architect, you plan this possibility of interpretations.
Well, I must confess, when we are designing, I think, and we next one.
Yes.
We compose those elements, square, cone, free form, and the Cartesian orders, but also to come up to here, we had a very direct sort of expression of steps and so on. So as a whole, and white columns are also important sort of element for modernism and so on. And that, yeah. But this some people may say it looks like a shoji screen, Japanese one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And the Pirotti, Corbusier. Yeah.
And,
so
the drawings, do you do them before or afterwards?
Oh no, we make many models.
And the drawings, like these drawings, are they done afterwards?
Only, yes, those are done after, just for fun, to entertain you.
Okay, so I think we are going to conclude here, and we are going to have a second entertaining evening with you at 6 o'clock.
Sure.
As a department lecture this evening. So I invite you to
a different kind of entertainment.
So different kind of entertainment, but always with the same person.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes. Thank you very much.
I'm not going to disappear.
Are there questions? So you have 8 hours to think about it, and this evening we'll meet again in the Hill A3 or 4 for your lecture, and we are looking very much forward.
We have a couple more images.
Okay. Actually, the lecture is this one. Okay, we continue.
You see, the spiral was built in a very congested area. But busy street in the front, just behind this volume. But once you go up to this level, it's surrounded by lower building, and you have more sky, and also silent from a noise of street. So I decided to make a very abstract landscape. Just when I was designing this one, I saw the movie called Last Year in Marienbad. Do you know the movie? It's very sort of abstract scenery and almost a desolate and place, but with a few human beings. But so that was also collage of some very detached space out of noisy urban situation. So once you come up here, you could have a kind of quietude too. But irony of life, today this place is being used for wedding ceremony, which you haven't really expected. You know, interesting things in architecture. You always try to philosophize whatever you thought. But in reality, it sometimes betrays you. Wedding. So the priests come in with the bride and groom and make some kind of ritual activity. Then behind here, we have a restaurant. So people go to eat together, which I haven't expected. So this is always a surprise in architecture too.
How things are developing, not in the way you thought about.
Yeah. It makes architecture very interesting. Sometimes what you thought, what you designed, would not come well. But sometimes comes good. But again, reality makes the space more unexpectedly interesting, and so on. So just the life goes on. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Not a